just working on the nut. The material that they've supplied for the nut is just a little under 6mm wide. I had to cut out a little bit of the veneer from the head in order to fit this in nice and snugly. So I didn't want to overcut it, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't damage too much of this, which was my concern. So what I did was I made up this very small bracket. It's just a piece of aluminium with a bit of protection on there to stop it from damaging, scratching. Cut off so that it's nice square edge. And what I thought I'd do is, as that's about 5.8mm, I took a 5.5mm drill and clamped that in there like that, and took the drill out, and then I used that as my edge to saw down to the bottom. And of course a bit of clean up there with a file, and clean up these two edges here, get these nice and flat, and keep just taking a piece off this until this fits just nice and snugly in there. And you can see that that's firm and solid. So once I've got a bit of glue in there with that too, that'll be perfectly seated. It's time to cut the slots in the nut for the strings, and I've been working on the spacing for these. You'd imagine that it would just be a basic equidistant spacing, but that's not the case. The fact that the strings are different thicknesses means if you did that, then at this end they would seem closer together than this end. So in fact you have to space them quite differently. The exact distances may well be mathematically worked out, but I think most luthiers have their own spacing based upon the look of the strings and the feel of the strings, which means that the spacing gets slowly wider as it goes across. I've done some calculations myself based on some of my other guitars, and we'll see how that works. The first thing to note is that the top E, this one here is 0.3mm thick, which is a 12th thou string, and I've managed to find myself a very small saw which is exactly that, so this becomes my first one to cut, and then we'll get the spacings correctly done with this before moving on to scalloping them out a bit wider for each string. The depth of the strings, what I've done here is I've cut a pencil in half and sharpened it down to a point, and this pencil I place on here and just make a mark along the back. And that is approximately going to be the depth of the strings, because the strings, when you hold them down here, there should just be a tiny movement down to that fret. So roughly speaking, that's where I should aim for. Well, the strings are on. They're all okay at this end. Just tiniest movement there as I touch them down, so that's all cut in. But the action is way high, so I've still got to do the final work on this end here on the bridge. When I measure this at the 12th fret with the feeler gauges, on this one here I got 3.5 millimeters. And on this one here, I got 4 millimeters, just slightly fraction under. So that tells me I need to get this down to about 1.9 to 2 millimeters. So I've got to take off 2 millimeters off this part of the bridge and 1.5 millimeters off this part of the bridge. And then we should have good action.